A slightly different kind of video today, an update about my quest for training here in Japan. I wanted to talk about this for a couple of reasons. Partially because it's sort of frustrating, but also because my recent experiences are concepts we've spoken about on this channel happening in real time. It's a real life example. So, first, a disclaimer. Some of what I'm going to cover here are just cultural differences. When in Rome, do as the Romans do, or so they say. And these are cultural differences that I've largely accepted, or at least tolerated in the past, but are now causing me some friction. I'm going to explain what has changed, but I want to stress that my problem has been fairly specific to me, I think. This isn't me saying that you shouldn't come train here, especially as a beginner. I still think it's a good experience, and many of my best memories in Japan are of training, so don't get me wrong. All right, so what is going on and what is the issue? Well, as many of you know, I've been poking around looking for places to train. This video, for the record, isn't directed at any one place in particular or even any one art. I've been in Aikido dojos, Judo dojos, Karate dojos, and what I'm about to get into was pretty ubiquitous across the board. Anyway, I'm visiting these places looking to train, right? At this point in my life, I feel like I have a pretty refined vision for what I want my training to be. I've got 25 years of karate on and off. I've got 16 of Aikido and Judo. I'm second degree black belt in all of these, if ranks mean anything to you, and I could probably push third dan if I really cared about ranks more. I don't. I historically drag butt when it comes to doing tests. I'm just not all that motivated by rank. Coming here, I knew that odds were very high that my black belts would not be recognized or mean anything, and frankly, I was and am fine with that still. Some color on my hip or lack thereof is a non-issue to me, so long as the training quality is solid. What I want out of training, really, is just a place where I can get more technically refined and have like-minded people to train intensely with. And this here is where the struggles begin. I've been to a handful of places now, and every one of them gave me some spiel on how what I was doing was totally wrong. Of course, not everything I do is great or perfect. I certainly understand that. I'm there to learn, after all. The issue is that I know enough to understand when the things they are pointing out are either pedantic or just wrong. I'll give two examples here. One would be the direction of your toes on a given stance. I'm talking like a 10-degree difference in angle, but apparently that 10-degree difference completely invalidates the entire stance when not observed, which I think is kind of silly. Again, they could just explain, but they don't. If there was a good explanation, then I would be much more willing to accept that. Of course, that isn't the Japanese way. You're just supposed to listen and do. The other example is that my break falling is wrong, and I mean, no, it's not. I think break falling is the skill I have the most confidence in, and I'd be willing to fall on concrete to prove it. I have been falling out of some very dynamic throws for years and years and years, and I have never been seriously injured. So, what is going on here? Several things, I think. The first is that all these are traditional martial arts, and in my experience, there is a certain type of older Japanese teacher that will vomit details on you to try and establish hierarchy, despite these details being only vaguely practical at best. Don't get me wrong, I think this is often done on purpose because they want to know that you'll comply with their tutelage. There often is a stage in training traditional martial arts where the teachers test you. Do you really want this or not? And on one hand, sure. But on the other hand, I can demonstrate everything in your curriculum for you right now, most likely. In the past, I was much more willing to roll with this kind of cultural difference because I was a lot younger. I had a lot more time, and martial arts was kind of this background thing that I was up to behind graduate school anyway. But I'm not super young anymore, and I'm certainly not getting any younger. The second thing, and this brings us to concepts frequently expressed on this channel, a lot of this feels like it has to do with branding and marketing, honestly. Something that is a pain point in Japan, and one that I honestly think is getting worse, is that traditional martial arts are super sensitive about you doing things in ways other than the way they're doing it. I think hardline conservatives would give a speech about preserving the art, but the criticism is that these skills are supposed to have a function at the end of the day. In the case of breakfalls, for example, what matters more, your students' safety or that they do it exactly the way you do it every time? I think the responsible answer is your students' safety, obviously. If the breakfalling technique is actually better, then you should be able to articulate why as the teacher. But when all things are equal, what really matters is whether or not people are being injured in this case. I think this sensitivity, though, mostly comes from the fact that traditional martial arts these days tend to just theorize at each other for market supremacy. In the modern day, rule sets are now so polished and sanitized and insulated for their given art, it's pretty difficult to even truly test arts against other arts. Plus, I don't think many people are really all that interested in this space, quite frankly. I don't think traditional martial arts are bad, but I do think they are more insulated than ever before, and it's compounded by the Japanese culture here in a way that, honestly, I don't feel is all that healthy. Not for teachers, not for students, and not for the future of the art themselves. Finally, I've really struggled to find the right intensity level to train at. Most places I've gone to are aimed at working people, hobbyists, and this is absolutely fine. My dojo back home was very much the same. The difference, I'm finding, is that here there is no scalability. Rather than having a group that wants to train hard and then everyone else training maybe at a slower pace, everyone here is just expected to train these super low common denominators, and I'm looking specifically at Aikido here. Aikido already struggles with martial stuff. If you take out the big breakfalls and all the cardio, there is very little left there. All I'll say is that in some of these places, I did not even break a sweat. And that isn't a very good thing because I'm not in spectacular shape. I was very unimpressed, disappointingly so even. Again, I do want to reiterate that I generally try to mesh with the culture, and this is why I came here willing to relinquish my ranks and whatever else. But I'm also not 20 years old anymore. I'm fine integrating into a dojo, but I'm very much over people telling me that my years of experience is actually all filled with wrong think. This is probably my American sentiments shining through, but to me, if someone showed up and said that they've trained X, Y, and Z martial arts, that's free real estate. The goal shouldn't be to try and delete all their hard work, but how that background can be adapted and assimilated into whatever they're training for. They already have experience. You just have to point them in the right path. You don't have to get rid of everything that they already were doing. Sure, they might, at the end of the day, end up looking different from everyone else in the room. They certainly won't look like the guys you trained from complete beginners either, but that is the thing. They might be new to your art, but they are not a beginner in the strictest sense, and they never will be again. At the end of the day here, some of this is inevitable, and I might have expected too much. Japan is well known for pounding down the nail that sticks up, even more so in conservative niches like martial arts. I'm just also to a point where I refuse to pay for tutelage that doesn't acknowledge my background, at least a little bit. You don't have to give me a belt. You don't even have to say that everything I'm doing is right, but I would like people to look at what my background is and figure out how they can use that to advance my training on a personal level. Is this selfish and culturally tone-deaf of me? Maybe I just need to empty my cup and train from square one again for like my second time, as this is my third time in Japan long term. Maybe all that's true, but it's also my time and money. I'd much rather take up a totally different hobby altogether than neglect my roots. And refusing to neglect my roots, ironically, is very Japanese. So where does this leave me? I'm honestly not entirely sure, but the way I see it, I basically have two options. Option number one is to take up an art that is so wildly outside of my experience that I'd be much more willing to accept nitpicking because my slate is truly clean. Option number 2 is to find a place that actually sees value in my experience and is willing to use it as a platform to build on rather than a skeleton to be buried. Finding this probably means I'm going to have to go somewhere like a boxing gym or maybe Kudo or something. I'm not sure, but definitely something that is a little bit more free, I guess. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but it's the one I'm using, I suppose. And even then, it's gonna come down to the folks teaching. You might go to a boxing gym and they might think the same thing. It's just that some of these arts are a little bit more receptive to the fact that not everybody who walks in the door is a complete beginner. Anyway, that is all from me for now. This was just a little update, maybe kind of a venting session. Sorry if it came across that way. If nothing else, this has really made me realize how lucky I was that I got to train Aikido so hard during university, because I genuinely think it was a rare experience at this point. I have not seen anything to that level anywhere else. So I'll keep poking around and seeing what's what. If you guys are in Japan or have been in Japan and have suggestions in the greater Tokyo area or around the Kanagawa side of the bay, by all means, drop a comment. I'd be happy to have places to just investigate at this point. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I will definitely make an update video as things develop. Hopefully I find a home dojo soon enough, but so far I think I am very much a Ronin. Thanks for listening, and I will catch you all later. Peace.